Dirt and Dildos 3, Lost Love and Blue Brain. I'm still here. Disclaimer this time being that I may or may not have changed names of characters because what's in a name, right? You can pay to have it changed for no reason at all, but the feds will still own your official tag number. My name was inspired by a mountain, not a drug. No myth, no meth. I tend to harden and sing under pressure, shoot random beams of light, and I may hurt you if you break me. This aging complex story is an outline as I remember it decades later. Lots transpired, much has changed, but my heart and intentions are still aligned. Who else could vouch for that? I don't have any idea how much anyone else from the high school small town will recall or who has told what version of things since so long ago, but staying in touch was impossible before cell phones and internet. In fact, it seems that there have been a number of conspiracies floating around all these years, haunting some unfairly. Hearts and souls nearly ripped to shreds as a result. Many, I won't mention, to protect their innocence. It was the 90s when I fell into the first real mutual love I'd ever known with Jason. Reading my grade school journals and diaries, you'd realize that I had many crushes not acted upon like most girls. Jason was the first bold enough to holler across the schoolyard, with all watching and listening, "I love you, Crystal." So naturally, I was elated and confident enough to reciprocate. My bio father said it before leaving for most of my life. My grandfather said it frequently to his passing day, and I don't doubt that they meant it. But I had never been as drawn to a guy with such a powerful magnetic pull. No way of fighting it. He was a goofy, witty, brooding ball player, and I was a shy, nerdy cheerleader, flyer, and run-through sign painter. We were both acing nearly everything we tried, scholastic and athletic. I admit that makes you want to barf, but there I was, new girl in middle school with a mysterious dark past, suddenly a great bet. I didn't object to popular, it just happened. I broke records, medaled in cross-country at state, oriented new students, helped plan assemblies and choreographed dances. A few advanced classes were created for me and select others, showing signs of boredom in regular courses. I felt lucky. Grateful to be among novel teachers and coaches with worldly culture and perspectives. I learned to love horseplay with the boys, developed warm and trusted relationships with guys of all ages and kinds. Boyfriends of female friends would call to confide in me, and I'd oblige and share to celebrate that dudes have feelings and emotions. They hurt just like gals when they bleed or are betrayed. I adore the candor, humor, and intellect of male company. Women have a tendency to thwart genius, play backstabbing games to torment, ruin, and poison to get their way, while men are more apt to assert dominance, control game, physically squash, or own to win. I think both suck, but still prefer the D. If I could clone myself, I'd leave behind the loving version of me with many for the sake of humanity. As a virgin until 17, I thought I'd ruin a beautiful thing by having sex with Jason too early, though I was aware that he'd already been active with others. Many openly wanted to be with him, but that was never any secret. In fact, a couple of my closest faux friends, Stacy and Heather, had the hots for him. They say they were going to talk to him for me if I was busy, but would try to sway him away instead, as I later found out through the grapevines of HS social BS. Jason had been through hell after an auto accident in which he was unfortunately the driver on a rainy day, coming back from a gathering. The car hydroplaned across an old slippery wooden bridge. The spirited gal in the back seat flew out through the open sunroof at the initial bump off of the road. Other guys opened their front doors and escaped with minor harm, only to watch the car continue downhill, taking the girl's life in the process. The town was horrified. Many times Jason confided in me that it was making him crazy with guilt, even though it was absolutely not his fault or intention to hurt her. He was a very sweet guy, not a fighter unless protecting his passions. His mother had left the family for as much as I heard, possibly for drugs and or cheating on his father. The loner, lush, logging father was doing the best he could with Jason and sister, whom I always admired. It was obvious they struggled, were in a lot of pain, similar to my own situation. Jason attempted suicide following harsh judgment and treatment, small minds, angry hearts, wanting someone to blame, to pay for the accidental death. Tragic and sad. Trying to assist Jason emotionally was difficult, and our schedules did not collide often. I rarely went to parties, since we never had extra money, barely had enough time to eat and sleep between classes, sports, working an evening job, and homework. I was only 90 pounds in high school. I ran with the guys and footballers who used to grab me up in the parking lot and juggle me like the ball. Gymnast and stunt woman. I'd end up laughing wholeheartedly, my kind of fun. One fateful night, when I opted to attend but leave a party early, my faux friends, Heather and Stacy, along with Jason and a few other guys, decided to go big with unknown combos of substances. Days later, I was informed that Heather definitely slept with Jason that night, possibly Stacy too, as both began ignoring me and were sent to other schools. Heather to live with her cop dad out of state, Stacy to a religious school nearby. At some point, one of them faulted a ball player for the illegal drugs. I now doubt that. I was overwhelmed, in shock, heartbroken in several ways. Even worse, shortly later, a gal whose name started with a K, likely seeking revenge on a cheating boyfriend, giddy-up rode Jason while he was drunk and half asleep on a couch at a friend's house, according to a witness. This was all shattering my already fragile heart, though I didn't resent Jason. Girls did us dirty too. Ultimately, Jason apologized, pleaded to be with me. I accepted after having already satisfyingly lost my virginity to an acquaintance from another town, someone I'd later be friends with in college. I knew something was off with Jason, acting more strange with time. No education on big pharma pills, mandatory government drugging, or street drugs back then. I had no understanding of what was truly wrong, nor did his father. Eventually, at another party that I did not attend, Jason somehow managed to get his hands on over 20 hits of acid, LSD, and tried to commit suicide again, not comprehending that it would mess with his brain for a while, not actually kill him. He was then admitted into a mental ward, by who, I still don't know. I was so torn that I attempted suicide as well by means of over-the-counter pain pills, but they simply made me extremely ill. My mom and sister mocked me, caught up in their own dramas so much that they did not notice how much my soul suffered. Alas, I was somehow able to keep my grades up, even though I often felt like a walking zombie that last year in high school. I couldn't bring myself to date anyone else, even though I had plenty of great guys that wanted to comfort me following the life-altering events. I was going to wait for Jason for a year after graduating so we could set sail to college together, possibly on sports scholarships if we played our cards right. Instead, I ended up crying alone and accidentally sleeping with a mutual friend of Jason and me, since we were impacted in a similar way and both loved and missed Jason. I was painted bad for that, since he had a girlfriend at the time. I visited Jason in the ward once or twice, but it was sterile and scary, and they were drugging him, which seemed to make it worse, like the entirely wrong way to handle someone who had been scrambled already. My last visit prompted Jason to attempt to break out, so they discouraged our interactions thereafter. I was angry, completely isolated, misunderstood, and had no idea how to help him. A part of me died in the system with him. I lost my faith in the U.S. method. My friends and family were too shallow and naive to notice that, I guess. Graduating with honors, I was encouraged to go away to a state college by most of my teachers. Was able to get a little assistance, help from my grandparents, and took out a couple of loans that took me 20 years to pay off. Directly quoting a few teachers' notes in my senior annual, "We'll all miss you. I think you know the admiration I have for you and your many talents and skills. I am a big, big fan of yours. Do life well." And another, "Go for the gold. You have great ability and can be whatever you want to be." However, things got sticky when Stacy joined me at the university a year later. Showed up with a car, which I did not have, and a connection for dealing acid, which was what all the cool kids were doing back then. Unfortunately, we will need you to accept that for the story, folks. At first, it was a casual infrequency, and I didn't care at all what drugs people chose, as long as they didn't force it on anyone or step on anyone in the process of hanging loose. There were no jobs to speak of for noobs at college. They were taken. I had no help at all from my parents, only calls from Mom crying about her empty nest syndrome and talking suicide if I didn't bus at home more frequently, especially after Sis moved away with her boyfriend. Yeah, that was super great. So, in order to eat and have clothes to wear, afford books and incidentals, I agreed to assist Stacy in moving some desired goods, sometimes odd jobs and contracts. I really had very few choices. My previous roommate gifted me an older friend's ID that resembled me so that I could slip into certain places with her. We were often allowed into concerts, backstage at events with bands, given special treatments in mosh pits and crowd surfing. I understand that this is all normal behavior back then, even though that's not what it seems like to those of you still living in cushy bubbles. I was never privy to where Stacy got the drug connection. Seemed as though it could have been Heather, who came back to the state and began hanging out with us during the same time frame. I stayed cautious and tried to hide my distrust. I rationalized all of it somehow. Sure, I had some wild and groovy times with these ladies, but the trespasses added up and dragged me too far down. Eventually, Heather and Stacy routinely mixed my drinks too heavy. I was a lightweight. Set me up with bad guys and alienated me at parties. And I was consequently raped a number of times. Again, no cell phones back then, and we carried no weapons. What could a lady do when the buddy system failed? Heather snuck nudie pics and made sexual advances on me in the years to come as well, to my dismay. Soon, bossy as ever, Stacy was controller and master of the drugs, handing it out like candy and encouraging peers to take more and more, sometimes handing it out without any recollection of to who or how many, or even if they paid. I never saw any proceeds, and she was already getting money from her parents. She ended up shacking up with several of my male buddies, which began ruining my friendship with them. I started loathing the way that she got whatever she wanted, bribing both of her parents whenever she had any desire, playing them against each other, lying to everyone, including me, sometimes my family, always seeming to get away with it. Stacy confided in me that she was most likely going to have to find herself a rich guy to procreate with, since she was so accustomed to getting what she wanted, didn't want to slave labor or work on her brain, like many I've unfortunately known. My heart was still aching and confused over Jason the whole time I was away at college. No one seemed to attract me for longer than a week or two, and no one knew how to empathize with such a heavy emotional first love experience. I quickly learned that it's not possible for me to cold-heartedly lead a man on for gain, as loads of gals do. I felt trapped and alone in the aftermath of heartache. No one tried to understand or talk to me or walk me through it. It began to feel like a curse of some kind, as if I could never find real love again, since such a big and strong one went so wrong, no fault or direct doing of my own. Solace came in the way of mountain biking, hiking, beach strolling, and losing myself intentionally at music concerts. College curriculum was boring, just a less entertaining, less interactive version of what advanced courses I had in high school. But I was paying an arm and a leg for it. This realization had my head spinning, and I lost interest almost altogether outside of the socializing and new discoveries. Eventually, Stacy got pregnant as she planned, enthusiastically betting her wealthy ex-boyfriend on the same weekend as a female friend's pretty boy player relative. I suggested she get a paternity test because a child has a right to know their real parents, as I was the only person present at both incidents and did not get a solid chance to know my father for complicated reasons. She immediately started a campaign to sabotage and stain my character, blame me for everything, pushed me away until the birth, and made me swear to total secrecy as temporary godmother, later changed. I did so, compromising myself in the process. Unfortunately, I believe that she's been deliberating with mutual friends and acquaintances over the years to further use me as a scapegoat for her dark secrets and discretions, as if motherhood and gossip with a splash of religion is a cure-all. I came home from college feeling entirely let down, never did hard drugs again, and promptly began a career in computers and management. Stacy moved many states away when the grandparents of her first child suspected possible foul play. I was never called or visited by her thereafter, except for condescending Facebook posts and a single nasty email she sent me a couple years after a surprise physical attack by my estranged dad in adulthood. The message she sent accused me of being a liar and pretending to be a victim, even though she hadn't communicated with me in years. Stacy surely gleaned something from gossiping with others like Sis, the wicked stepmom my age, or the military criminal ex-roomie. No one in my immediate circles of family or former friends stayed close to me over the last decade. My political involvement literally required severing most ties for sanity, confidentiality, and protection reasons, which most people fully still don't comprehend today. In fact, I was home deliberating on music, juggling multiple clients as only legal driver with shared car during the last high school reunion festivities. Stacy came in from out of town to attend, and my sister went too, refusing my invite to connect outside of the event, as usual. Online folks from high school started harassing and poking me increasingly thereafter, so I can only assume that rumors were sprinkled like glitter at the party. I shouldn't have to explain why the high school town still makes me sick. I've got a stewing pot of love left over for all my old buddies and bullies, but I've pretty much given up on sinking the fact efforts. Gonna mobilize with my truths in search of rational sympathizers, fellow spirits with the condition I call blue brain, insufficient mental stimulation, instead of trying to negotiate with zombies and walls. In closing on these subjects for now, I'm not sure who witnessed or who knows which parts of what I've shared. I'm hoping that if anyone was or is curious about my view, this will fill in the gaps, maybe offer clarity and relief for some involved as it does for me. I'm also going to note that in light of this story, it may become obvious why I was legitimately pissed off the last few years. Twisted apple boobs employees threw me back into the same old torment, deliberately hijacking and manipulating my current long-term guy into douche things he wouldn't usually do when they knew we needed each other during and after the 2015 harassment, bullying, and 2016 drugging poisoning. A heart cannot handle that kind of gang betrayal once, let alone twice or more, without deflation or dying. Were the events then and now connected? Heather, Stacy, stepmom, rumor instigated? Or is America just that trashy by standard? Don't worry. There's still room for a few more names on the fish bonker. Truth in your face. Would you rather live what I've shared, as in my case? Touché. Stay thirsty and frisky, all ye posers and hosers.